Well, good morning, Gail. This
Good
is
morning, Glenn.
Gottfried, who is our resident photographer of wildlife in the canyon. And Gail, if you just like to kind of take control of the meeting and just let everybody know what it is you're doing, how long you've been doing it, and anything that you want to add.
Great. I put together some pictures for you from the history of my doing this. Here's just a quick background on my first screen. Obviously, this is a bobcat, which sometimes in our neighborhood gets confused for the mountain lion. And this is a really good picture that shows the difference between a bobcat and a mountain lion. So you can see his bobbed tail with the white underside. And you can see that he has pretty much a cat looking face. Like he doesn't look like a lion. He really looks like a cat with the tufts on the sides of his cheeks and the pointy ears. Mountain lions look very different. And also the bobcats in our community almost all have this spot pattern on their legs. And they're probably all related to each other, and that's where it comes from. And some have bigger rosettes. I'll show some pictures later. But they're a good bit smaller than a mountain lion. They come up maybe to your knees, the bobcats, and they are not very interested in us. They will kind of walk right by you. And there's been no history ever of a bobcat attack on any human being
Right.
that we know of. So they're not really a big threat to us. They're terrific for rodent control. And so if you are lucky enough to have a bobcat in your yard, you probably have fewer ground squirrels and fewer rats.
Right. So the viewers know you have these cameras set up on your property in the canyon, in the upper part of the lower canyon, right? I mean, you're right adjacent to the mountainside.
Yes.
You have several cameras, I believe, or a few.
Right
And
now I have three cameras up. I have a fancy camera that takes pictures like this, and I have two less expensive uh, standard trail cams like that you can buy from Amazon that I have set on video at the moment. So right now I just have those three.
and how long have you been filming here in Sierra Madre?
Well, here is a little bit of that story.
Okay.
Here's my early trail cam tech story. In 2012, I read an article in National Geographic about trail cams, and that was the first I had ever even heard of them, which is kind of sad. I moved to this house in 2003, and the sellers told me that I should expect to see animals in the backyard. And frankly, for the first 10 years, I was kind of afraid to go out after dark because I didn't know what was going to be on the hillside. So when I read the National Geographic article, I thought, okay, this is a great way to actually see what's on the hillside. Because until then, I really didn't know. So this is my very first picture that I got from a trail cam. And you can see kind of right here is a fox. And it's not a great picture, August 2012. The trail cam cost me maybe $50. It's very inexpensive. And it was only black and white. At night, it had no infrared. It had infrared, but it didn't have infrared that would show color at night. And modern cameras now will do that. And I was super excited to see a fox because I'd never seen a fox in the yard before that.
And are because I'm not familiar with is it a gray fox?
Yes, they're gray foxes here in Sierra Madre.
Okay.
So they don't look gray. So this is a more modern picture from my better camera. In 2021, I put up a digital camera with help from a friend who I'll talk about a little bit later. Um, you can see that now I have flash and I have color, and this is a night picture. And this is the first picture we got from that camera in 2021.
And that looks like pretty high resolution too, especially for a night shot.
Yes, but we got better at it as the time went on. And so here is the most recent fox picture I have. So we were better able, like we learned how to set the settings on the camera a little bit better to get the right exposures and to get the flashes in the right place. So the camera is mounted, this fancy camera is mounted on a post, and it has two flashes on either side that point right at where we think the animal will be. And so you can see it's very high resolution. We can see like their eyes and their faces. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about how we've used that to identify particular animals over time.
Right. And so because the pictures are so clear, then you can recognize and identify different ones.
Yeah, and actually, Fish and Wildlife calls us sometimes and they say, hey, have you seen bear so and so or this animal that they are familiar with because they know that we'll have the photos.
Right.
So there's foxes. Then I have, this is my first, one of my first pictures of deer from the 2012 camera. And you can see the camera is pointed the wrong direction. So I got their backs and I got the back of my house instead of the hillside because behind me there's nothing, at least in 2012, there was nothing but trees behind me at the time. So I was like, okay, got to move the camera. And this is what our more modern camera looks like.
Okay.
This is a young buck just starting to grow his first set of antlers. So you can see his little bumps on his head. You can see he's looking straight at the camera because this camera takes 4 photos in sequence. So as soon as an animal trips the motion sensor, which is heat and motion activated both, so that it doesn't go when just plants are waving. So the combination of heat and motion will trigger the sensor, and then it shoots 4 in a row. And this just happens to be, he heard it, he looked at it, the ears are great, the face is great. It's just a really nice picture of him looking right at us.
Right. Well, I mean, it's almost like it was posed.
Well, a lot of them look like they're posed, and that's one of the joys of this kind of trail cam is if you can figure out where to put it, that you know the animals are going through, because that takes a while. Like if you're aiming from the side, sometimes you get sides or their rear ends and never get a face. So you have to play with it for a while, play with positioning until you can figure out what's going to actually get their face.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another example from the early days. That's a bear, and that's the first bear I got in my trail cam in 2012, and it was nighttime. Well, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was early in the morning, and all I got was his back end blurry. But I was excited because I was like, okay, there's a bear up there. And 2012, I'm going to talk a little bit later about sort of the evolution of the photos of bears in town.
Sure.
But 2012, we did not see them in the street, and we rarely even saw them on the hillside. Like it was a very occasional experience, and they must have come pretty consistently at night because that's what the camera shows. But I never saw them during the day, and none of the neighbors really saw them during the day much either.
Right.
So here's a more current bear.
Mm.
And here you can really see this is at night, and because the hillside is farther away from the bear, it just looks black. And sometimes we do a little bit of post-processing to clear it up or remove some junk in the background if we have like sprinklers or something that show in the background. But mostly that's just what the picture looks like. And in this case, this is a female bear, and she's been coming to the yard since at least 2017, and we think she is a 2015 cub of one of the other bears that we see regularly.
Okay. When,
And we can recognize her. I'll talk more about the recognition process a little later.
okay.
That's my first bobcat picture.
Uh,
And here you can see Bob's just kind of cruising through. The 2012, one of the things that's really noticeable about the pictures and the difference is that all of this plant stuff in the background either died during the drought or was taken out in the fire.
this is 2012, so it had been last year's fire then. Yeah.
That's right. So I'm going to show you some pictures from the fire itself, and so you can see how different it was. In 2012, the yard was really rich, and the whole hillside was filled. This is sort of sugar bush, and those are Dracania plants. And it helped with the photography because it made a pretty background and it also reduced any glare or any vision from the neighbors. Like it completely blocked off any sight of any neighbors. And so the camera was very private. Um, and that changed over the years. First, through the drought, we lost a lot of these trees up here. And then the fire, we lost almost all of this sugar bush here on the right.
What about the 2008 fire? Did that come directly behind your house?
It did not. You know, it came on the ridge side right behind us, and we had to evacuate at 11:30 at night, but it didn't come down the closest ridge to us.
Okay,
It did come down like two houses away from me, the house that was owned by Harry and Carolyn Gravatt.
right.
That's right above what used to be the Waddell property.
Okay,
The fire went down that ridge, and
okay,
so it hit the bottom there, but it did not come our way, and we were really relieved.
right. And then last year in the Eaton fire, that came very close to your house, correct?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you some pictures from the
Okay,
camera of what it actually looked like.
sure.
Yeah. So there's our 2012 Bob. Here's our 2022 Bob. And he really, this is a young male bobcat who was a kitten in our yard. So we watched him grow up. And he was never scared of the flash from the very beginning. Like if his mother must have just taught him it's not going to upset him. And so he was always very curious. So we have a lot of full face shots from this cat. The bobs are easy to identify if you have them this close in the photos because they have very distinct spot patterns. And so we can say, okay, well, here is, you know, 3 spots here on his foot and match it up over that way.
Right, right. Are you are you able to kind of, I mean, you have such a long history of filming this and studying it. Are you able to kind of get a grasp, let's say just with the bobcats, a local population? And I don't know what is their range that they will typically travel? Or
The
do you
bobcats actually don't go very far. And the people in the upper canyon have photos of bobcats that don't look like the ones that are in my yard at all.
okay,
And so that's interesting to me because you would think that they would travel a little further. But bobcats, particularly, are known for not staying in one den. So when they have kittens, they move the kittens every couple weeks for safety.
okay,
And I've seen moms and kittens, but I've never seen mom carry a kitten to go somewhere else. So
okay,
they're pretty stealthy. I think they go up the hill as opposed to lateral across the canyon.
okay,
I think they just go up.
okay.
But this guy looks like his dad. And so we could tell, we were like, we know who the father is on that because he looks almost just like the dad.
And
Um,
just
so,
gorgeous.
yes, they're really beautiful animals. This is my first mountain lion picture. And you can see it's very blurry and very overexposed. Christmas 2012. And I knew that we had mountain lions pretty regularly up here. And I know like 2012, most of the community was already beginning to migrate to Facebook. And so there was a lot of discussion about each time someone would see a mountain lion, people would post and they'd say, oh my gosh, we saw the mountain lion, bring your pets in. And I would think, I see them in the camera all the time, and you just don't know it because no one told you that they're up there. Um, but they seem like the mountain lions mostly come at night, and I'll show some examples of daytime lions and tell a little story. Um, they don't seem interested in us at all. They ignore the camera. They ignore pretty much everything up there. If there's water, like I had a pond for a while, and they would just drink out of the pond and then walk on by.
Right. So for living in the canyon as long as I have, I've never seen a mountain lion. I've seen pretty much all the other wildlife, but have never seen a mountain lion.
I have seen them in person only 3 times in the years that I've lived here. And all 2 were at night, and one was at 8 o'clock in the morning. And once was in the backyard, just sitting in the backyard when the neighbors were having a party and a barbecue. And he just sat there, and I guess it smelled good. Sat there for about an hour. Once was in the middle of the street on Sturtevant, just shy of the turn onto Alta Vista.
Okay.
And he was just sitting in the middle of the street at about 8:30 at night. and I drove up in my convertible, and I fortunately had the top up. And so I stopped until he left. And so I sat in the middle of the road for a while until he walked out of the road. And then the third time was about 8 in the morning. I was on my way out running. And as I walked out the front door, a mountain lion ran past me and went over the hillside.
And are these mountain lions, are they the same as a cougar?
Yes.
Okay.
So cougar, mountain lion, puma, catamount, and panther are all names for the same animal.
Okay.
Here is more recent mountain lion. And, this is a young male. He's just walking down the trail and the camera flashed at him and he just took a look and kept on going.
Yeah. I mean, they look so posed. Like if you had a stuffed animal and tried to get just the perfect shot with the shadows and the lighting, you couldn't have got it any better.
Right. And, sometimes when I send pictures to people, they tell me it looks like taxidermy. They say it looks like stuffed that animal. And I'm like, no, he's just walking. And because there's four in the sequence, you can see kind of sometimes I get half a lion and then a whole lion and then the other half of a lion in the sequence.
Sure. And these are just pictures, not videos, or can do both?
This camera is set on still photos, and I
Okay.
do get video. I didn't include any for today because they suck up a lot of computer time.
Okay.
And so I do have videos if anyone ever wants to come and see them. So I really like the mountain lions. I think they're interesting. Sometimes I get footprints that I cast in plaster, especially if it's been raining. We get really nice footprints. But mostly they just quietly walk on by. Mountain lions generally have a bigger range, and so traditionally they pass through our space in about a 5-week cycle. And there was between 2021 and 2023, we didn't see any mountain lions in the camera at all. And we weren't sure if they were going up higher or going around. Over by the Hagans, they would say they were seeing them. And so we thought maybe it was just higher up on the hill and not coming across our trail.
Right.
But then in last year in 2025, or maybe late 2024, they started returning on the 5-week cycle.
And do you
So,
think it was because of water source or food source or?
I don't know the answer to that. I suspect it was food related. And we did have some amount of slide, and one of the trails washed out even before the fire. And so we thought maybe they just couldn't cross that anymore. And, we were seeing fewer deer crossing that path also, and the lions will follow the deer. And so we're like, maybe they're just going higher up on the hillside because they're sliding down if they're closer to us.
Okay.
There is a higher trail above us that goes behind the first ridge and up to Sunrise Hill.
Okay.
That we can't see. So we suspect that's where they were going.
Okay.
Now, this is Joanna Turner. She owns the cameras, and she has worked in wildlife photography for a number of years. And she came to me, this is a picture from 2021, to put in a big camera because I had photos of a lion that Fish and Wildlife was tracking and had a tracking collar on. And so she's like, can I put up a big camera in your yard? And of course I said yes. And we get these beautiful photos. And I have a story about that lion coming up in a little bit, I
Okay.
think.
And I'm sorry, who is it? This
Her
woman?
name is Joanna Turner,
Okay. And is she
and she's on Facebook as Cougar Magic.
okay? And she's not with the Fish and Wildlife then?
No, in fact, she
Okay.
is a sound editor who works in Hollywood,
Okay.
and she is no longer living in Los Angeles. And so I maintain the cameras here
Okay.
in my yard that actually belong to her.
Okay.
Okay, so my next part of discussion is related to something that we already started talking about, which is how the animals respond when they see the cameras. So reactivity is sort of an old psychology term that refers to when you're being observed, you recognize you're being observed and you change your behavior.
Right.
And, all of us do that, even as humans. Like if you know that someone's watching you do something, you try to do it a little bit better. And all behavioral researchers know that what they get on video, even video that's like in the middle of the night and no person is there, is going to be influenced by the fact they can see the flash or hear the camera go off or something. So we do always look at the reactivity of the animal because we don't want to upset the animals, and we also don't want to get fake pictures, especially video. Like if you're looking from a scientific point of view, you want to make sure that what you're getting is normal behavior.
Right.
So we do look at reactivity. Habituation refers to the animal's stopping, the animal's cessation of caring that the flash is going off. So at the beginning, they're very reactive when they come through the catwalk, and which is what we call the backyard. And then they seem to habituate to it, meaning that they just don't seem to notice or care. They don't react. They don't look at it. They just keep walking right on by as if it weren't happening. And then dishabituation occurs when something changes that sets off that alters their habituation pattern. So I had an example I used to use in my intro psychology class where I had a bear who came regularly and didn't seem to care at all about the camera. And so it was completely habituated. He'd walk right past, no sign of acknowledging it. And he'd been coming for more than a year, and so he just didn't seem to care. But then one day the camera flash was not working. And the bear definitely noticed that the flash was not going off and smacked the camera and tried to like shake the camera and then sat down in front of the camera for 2 hours, almost as if it were waiting for the camera to actually go off. It kept looking at the camera, and we thought that bear knows that it's supposed to be there. And so that's the dishabituation part. They're like, hey, I thought there was a camera going to go off and I didn't care about it, but since it's not going off, now I care about why it's not going off.
Mm.
And that was really interesting pattern.
And have you seen that reaction more than that one time?
Yes, it's really quite interesting. And we see it, frequently with coyotes who do jump right away when they see the camera. And then they get used to it. And then if it's not working right, they're looking at it again. We also see it with, domestic cats and dogs that are loose in the canyon
Okay,
will show the same pattern.
interesting.
So here's a good example of a bobcat reacting. You can see his feet are off the ground. The camera just went off and he's about to run. And he was not having it. But by the next day, because we had just put up the camera the day before when this picture was taken. And by the next day, he didn't care anymore. He was just walking right on by as if it weren't happening. But here he was like, I'm going to run away now that that thing is flashing in my face.
Okay.
Here's a coyote looking at why is that flashing at me. The coyotes are kind of stealthy and they are easily spooked. And that I find interesting because the coyotes, generally, we think of coyotes as kind of aggressive. But they're pretty easily chased away by motion activated light.
Right.
Now, the bear cubs love the camera. They're really curious. They come up all the time. Sometimes they lick it. Sometimes they like try to chew on it. And so we have a lot of nose photos and teeth photos and just all sorts of like right in your face. Now, this is I'd say about a 6-month-old cub. And he'd been coming to the yard. Actually, we think it's a girl. So she'd been coming to the yard since she was maybe 2 or 3 months old, but still found the camera curious. And so if it would go off, she would come over and look right at it. That's a bear that was first time on the catwalk, we think, and had the same experience, was like, okay, what is this? I'm going to go put my nose in that camera lens. This is an older, it's an adult male. This one's an adult male, but maybe 5 years old, not too big yet.
And remind me, so the cubs will stay with the mother for about 2 years. Is that
They stay
correct?
about 18 months. So
Okay.
typically we see the mothers separate from the cubs in late May and then mate again in June or July.
Okay.
Now, people say, the biologists say that the mother will one day just kick out the cubs, and they say the cubs cry, and that it's traumatic for that one day because the cubs don't know it's coming. But I've never seen that in the yard. Like I've never seen the separation. I do sometimes see the yearlings wandering around trying to find mom, but I've never seen the mom push them away on the cameras.
Okay. And are you noticing then when you would see a mom with a cub or two cubs, three, um, and then you see the same mom later on without the cubs again when the cubs have left?
Yes.
Okay.
This year, in fact, last summer, I had a mom with two cubs. And then in February of this year, I had the mom show up with one yearling. So, and it's the same mom. And so we know that one of the cubs was lost over the winter, and we have no idea what happened. But that happens sometimes, is that a mom will come with two cubs in the first year, and then in the second year will only have one.
And the cub would have been too young to survive on its own. Okay.
Yeah, usually what happens there is either there was a food shortage for both bears, a car accident, a couple cases we heard, I've never seen, but I heard that there was a car versus bear interaction in town, um, or some sort of predator. So sometimes a male bear or possibly a mountain lion. But I've never seen any of that on the camera. I just know from what the biologists tell me that that's why you only have one show up the next year.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, that's one of our cubs from, I think this is 2022. It was one of a pair, and again, had been on the catwalk almost every single day
Mm.
and liked to look at the camera. This one wasn't a camera licker. It just liked it. This one's also this is a boy, and he liked to just stare at the camera.
Right. And so the viewers know too, even so that their fur is brown in color, these are black bears.
Yes, California doesn't have any brown bears. The biologists refer to this as cinnamon colored
Right.
because they're a little bit red. Um, I do have a couple pictures of bears that are darker to show later that do show up. But most of our bears look like this. And most of the bears, from what we can tell, at least the majority of bears that we see are all related to each other here in the canyon.
Okay.
The primary exception to that is during mating season, we get a bunch of males that show up looking to mate, that show up for like 3 or 4 days and then disappear again. But most of our bears have they must have the same genes because they all seem to look exactly the same, and and some of them we can trace their lineage.
Okay.
Um, Here's a raccoon. So it's not uncommon to get raccoons here in the canyon. They don't usually go up on the hill. They're more likely to be in people's yards than they are up on the hillside and trees in front of people's houses. Um, it's also the case that sometimes when your trash is tipped over, it was actually the raccoon and not the bear
Mm,
because they get into trash a lot. So we blame the bears sometimes when it's really the raccoons.
I see.
If you have a pond and if you have fish, then the raccoon has probably been in your pond and has tried to eat your fish.
Right.
At my house, I have a stream in the front, no fish, but a stream in the front, and they like to dig out the plants and wash their hands.
I've noticed in the canyon, if we plant sod, buy sod and put it, when you go out the next morning, the sod is all tore apart too.
Yeah, and that's usually the raccoons, and sometimes it's the possums. And so
Yeah.
I think I have a possum. Oh, not yet. I have a possum in here later. Um, but the raccoons, I think the raccoons are kind of cute, but they are a little bit of trouble.
Right.
When I first moved here, in between closing escrow and actually moving into the house, I brought up, I had a marine aquarium at the time, and I brought it up early before I moved in everything else. And I went one morning at 6 a.m. to feed the fish. And I'd only owned the house for like 2 days. And as I came inside, I turned on the light. I had an overhead light. I turned on the light. And when I turned around, there were two raccoons sitting on the windowsill just watching me. And I thought, boy, I haven't even gotten here yet. And you're already introducing yourselves. Um, so I do see a fair amount of raccoon behavior in my yard.
Right. Because I live just right across the street from the wash, at middle of the night, we'll hear them down in the wash, and they can be pretty aggressive and loud and
Yes.
reaching, and yeah.
Yeah, now I have twice seen a mountain lion carrying a raccoon. So I know that the mountain lions in the camera, not in person, but I know that the mountain lions will attack raccoons.
Right.
Um, so this is our collared mountain lion. And this is the only time I've had a lion in the yard during the day in the, 14 years since I've been taking pictures. And this lion, there's an interesting story about this lion. She was called Monrovia lion because after the bobcat fire in 2020, she was found in a person's yard in Monrovia hiding under bushes. And so the owner first called my friend Joanna, who owns the camera, and the Cougar Conservancy, which is a nonprofit organization that helps with cougar human interaction, and Fish and Wildlife. And so all three groups showed up at this man's house, and Fish and Wildlife was able to capture the lion and then rehabilitate the lion, who had burned paws and some singed ears and a fair number of injuries from that looked like she'd been caught in the fire. And we recognized the lion because she had a notch in her ear. And so she'd been coming to my yard for at least a year and possibly was a kitten in the yard in 2 years prior to the fire. Um, so Fish and Wildlife took her to UC Davis and they put like fish skin on her paws to regenerate her own skin on the burns, and they gave her a collar and a tag. And one day after the collar and the tag, she showed up in my yard.
So
And
did they release her back
yeah,
into the local
yep.
area, not released in Davis?
No, they released her back here because this was her
Okay.
territory originally. So
Okay.
she showed up in the yard this afternoon, and it was a little bit, to me, it was a little bit fortuitous because just that morning, first she had come a Saturday night, and I saw her in the camera Saturday night in the middle of the night. And so I called Joanna and I said, "Hey, Joanna, Monrovia Lion was in the yard last night." And Joanna said, "Oh, I have an extra camera. Let's put two in your yard and see if we can get a good picture of Monrovia Lion." So Joanna came and she was here about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and she put up a new camera, this one that was in this spot facing right there. And then she hiked up on the hill a little to see if she could track the lion's footprints. And so she's calling to me from on the hillside. She's like, I can get this far, but now I've lost the path. And so she came back, and an hour later, and then she went home. All right, so the camera was working, and Joanna went home. And an hour later, my next door neighbor called me and said, "Gail, there's a lion, a mountain lion with a collar that's chasing deer in our backyard right now." And I was like, that lion knows that Joanna saved her and she heard her voice or whatever. And she showed up to say thank you. And she chased the deer for a while. She didn't catch anything. And then she disappeared.
And haven't seen her since.
About a year later, her tracking collar stopped working and they found that she had died.
Oh,
And it was unrelated to the fire. They did track the body to reclaim the collar. It was in one of the canyons a little further east from us. And I don't remember, they thought she might have fallen off the hillside, but she was not undernourished and she had carried kittens. And so they knew that she had been healthy after the release and that this was some other reason that she died.
just part of
Um,
the life cycle.
After we lost Monrovia lion, then we had about 2 years without any lions visiting the yard at all. And we thought maybe we saw them earlier because it was her and then males tracking her. And then once she was gone, they weren't coming through again. But then one day a young male showed up, and then we had more lions again.
Does anybody have any idea of just the local mountain lion population in our kind of immediate area? Say from,
No, and it's interesting because Fish and Wildlife has done a lot of studies in Santa Monica Mountains, and they
right,
have a lot of tracked lions there. And they've done a little bit of tracking in the Verdugo Hills, but they've done nothing in San Gabriel other than Monrovia lion, and that's only because she was at Davis.
okay,
Yeah, so I think we have more than we think, but I don't really know.
right.
Okay, so what do I have next? Families and herds. We can identify families and herds pretty easily because they travel together and they look alike. Um, so here's an example. The male deer like to travel together. And so often on Grandview, um, on the old, what is it, near the search and rescue.
The Heflin estate,
Yeah, the old Heflin estate and south of that between Heflin and Grandview.
right.
Um, you often will see up to 16 or 17 deer in a herd there. We don't think they're the same deer that hang out at the monastery site. We think that they travel in different groups, but sometimes we get like 6 or 8 males. They seem to hang together, except during mating season. We have does with fawns separate from this group of boys, we call them. It's like the group of boys is here.
The dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, so here there are two, but there's like 5 more behind them who continue to walk up in the later photos. Um, yeah, and the deer, I mean, obviously, deer lose their antlers every year.
Mhm.
And I have never found antlers in the yard, but we can always see, like, this is early season, and you can see that the one here on the right, he's a double branch. I forget what those are called.
Orchard horns.
Yeah, forker horns is whatever. He's got more that are still growing in, but he looks like he's young because they're just growing back in. Let's see. There's one of our fawns, uh, still with spots. The fawns, frankly, of all the animals, the fawns make us the most nervous because that's an easy catch for the mountain lion.
Right.
So sometimes we see 2 fawns and then a fawn disappears. So one year, Robert Gertie over on Vista Circle saw a mountain lion take a deer over his hillside, a fawn. So it was mom plus 2, and then suddenly it was mom plus 1.
Right.
Um, but they're really cute and we like to see them. It's not uncommon for fawns to be born in someone's yard here in the canyon. So some of the neighbors will report that a fawn was born underneath their tree.
Uh, can you respond to? I've heard that occasionally a mother will leave a fawn in somebody's yard and leave it to whatever to get food, and the homeowners will see it and think that it's been abandoned, but it's not.
Yeah,
Is that
it
true?
is not. Yeah, that's true. And so sometimes, like in our Facebook pages, you'll see that the rescuers will send out messages that'll be like, "Hey, it's fawn season. Don't worry if the fawn is sleeping in your yard. It's young and it's hidden, and its mom will come back when it's able to walk a bigger distance to graze."
Right, right. And I'll see them on Sturtevant where I live, Sturtevant and Woodland, right? You'll see a mom. I mean, it's some certain times of the year, almost daily. They just
Yeah.
walk down the middle of the street, and when my roses start to bloom, forget about it. There's just going to be sticks in the morning.
Me too. Like I cannot grow many plants. And after the fire, I'm going to show you some pictures of what my yard looked like after the fire, but I have been landscaping to prevent more erosion, and we were hit hard on our block with the mudslide in February. And so I've been landscaping with deer-proof, fire-proof, and erosion supporting plants to try to prevent some of the problems. And so far, the deer have not eaten them. Buckwheat and deer grass and sage, they're not really interested in that when there's other stuff.
Right. It seems like too our hillsides are becoming more stable since last year, since the rainfall. I'm noticing more vegetation, and even in the rains that we had earlier this year, everything seems a lot more stable.
Yeah, We have two rills that are pretty bad still up here, but most of the land is pretty stable. And just this morning, I was talking with Wayne about that in particular, about how we can continue to shore up the hill and keep fire tolerance low, but erosion support high.
Right. Well, and I remember last year Scott Williams and I came to your house really soon after that flow. And I mean, you've got a pretty significant hillside behind you that with a lot of potential for mud flow through there.
That's right. And you know, it's scary. So at the February warning, we were red flagged, and fire department came, or police, I forget, somebody came to our houses, all four of us who are at the top of the hillside, and they told us to evacuate. They said, we have no idea what's going to come down the hill and we think you should leave. And so we left. And my house, my house is on a lot that originally, I guess a better way to say it is there are four houses now on what was originally a single lot.
Mm.
And so we've had a multiple lot splits. And my house was built in 1921 and it's right at the peak of the ridge. And so I get less of the mud than my neighbors do who are lower into the ridge. So whoever built my house originally, which we're still working on tracking down the full history, but whoever built it must have been an engineer and must have had a good insight into where to put the house to not be hit by the mud. But my neighbors on both sides were hit hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else have I got? Oh, the skunks. I see they're striped skunks. I have never seen a spotted skunk in my yard, but I had a mom with five show up one year, and they travel together. They rarely spray. I think in the years I've lived here, only twice did I have a problem with the skunk spraying. And mostly they just walk on by. They don't care about the flashes or anything. Right now I see them at least twice a week. This is the time of year where we see a lot of skunks. So it's nice to see all of the family out for a walk. Here we have a bobcat and mom and kitten. Mom's at the top and kitten's at the bottom. Same thing, they travel together. Bobcats stay with their kittens almost a year. And then the kittens wander off, or the mom wanders off. This particular kitten stayed in the yard. And the mom, sometimes we see the mom down on the fire road hooking up with another male. And so we know that she's still around, but she doesn't spend as much time in the yard.
We had my wife and I maybe a year ago. There was a male and a female bobcat right in the middle of Sturtevant, but they go through this just amazing like mating ritual dance and
Yes,
the
and they're
ground.
really loud. Like it sounds like somebody's screaming when they do that.
But it almost seemed like I say ritualistic
Mhm.
the whole encounter. Yeah.
Yeah. So we see that Sturtevant is a pretty common place for that. Um, I've seen that sort of behavior at the corner of Sturtevant, at the corner of Alta Vista, and then down by you, just in the middle of the street. They just seem to hook up and yell at each other for a while and then follow each other off to wherever their happy place is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the kitten up close. And I mean, you can see kind of from the scale of the jade that this bobcat's only about 10 inches high at his hips and maybe 14 inches high at his head. And so it's about half the size of a full-grown bobcat. So still a baby wandering around. Um,
I'm just
here
so
are two.
impressed.
Oh,
I'm so
yes.
impressed just by the quality, the clarity of the photographs. They're
Yeah,
so
the cameras
cool.
are really terrific. I mean, it's a standard Canon camera like you would take if you were going on safari or somewhere else. And one of the lenses is a telephoto lens and one is a wide angle lens.
Okay.
So we have a lot of variety. This tree, I'm going to show you another picture of this tree from a little bit later. It's actually not a tree. It was a Dracania plant, which is a succulent. It's what the biologists call a marking tree. And so the bears come and rub on it to leave scent for each other as a mark. And you'll see it's been broken. It's really low now, and the bears are still coming to rub on it anyway. And it's filled with claw marks. And so I have another picture of that to show that. And this was earlier on. The cubs like to climb. So this is one of their favorite trees because it smells like lots of bears.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, and this is just from this earlier this week. I had a mom possum show up carrying all of her babies on her back. And this is actually a still photo from one of the videos. And I didn't enhance it in any way. I just pulled a screenshot to talk about today. That's the first time in all the years I've been photographing the animals that I actually got a mom possum with the babies.
In on the backs. But aren't possums marsupials?
No, I
No,
thought
they're
they were
not.
too, or maybe that's how they're born, but
Okay.
they travel with all of the babies on their back. So in this picture, it's hard to tell from the screenshot I pulled, but she's got at least six on her back.
Poor thing. Yeah.
Yes, and I was really disappointed that she didn't go past the fancy camera because
Okay.
then I would have had a good picture. And I sometimes that happens where you get a video and you're like, "Oh, now I get to look at the good picture on the big camera," and then they didn't go that way.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about how we identify some of the individuals. And this is a little controversial because I know that we definitely have a lot of people here in town who don't want to name the animals or don't want to feel like the animals are anything other than wild. But when they come through the yard all the time, we want to have some convenient way to talk about which animal it is that we've seen again.
Sure,
And
it
so
makes
sometimes we
sense.
say things like the big bear who looks like he's wearing a tie, but usually we just give him some easy name, just so that we can track them.
And are Fish and Game, are you working in conjunction with Fish and Game on the names so that when you
Uh,
speak, you,
We do when they actually have numbers. If they
okay,
actually have numbers, we call them only by number, and
okay,
then we communicate with Fish and Wildlife. And we do tell them sometimes, like there's one bear that we called Cocoa Puff for a really long time because he was a darker brown than some of the others. And then he was tagged. And so now we call him by his tag number.
okay.
So this is an early camera shot of this is bear 407, who you can see as 407 tag. And he had a second tag that was like 525 or something. And so in the early years of my living here, the sheriff's department tagged an animal if it was caught. And they did not keep track of the numbers. And so this is a bear that was trapped twice, and they gave him two tags at the time, and then they didn't pay any more attention to them other than that they had been tagged.
I,
And here you can see he's being followed by a girlfriend who's here in the background.
yeah. So
Um,
why would the sheriff's department tag them? I mean, wouldn't that be Fish and Wildlife that's doing
well,
it?
now it's Fish and Wildlife, and
Okay,
so I don't know why it was the sheriff's department because I know it's the sheriff's department that it used to be because I called Fish and Wildlife and I said, "What can you tell me about Bear 407 525?" And they said nothing because he was tagged before we took over the tagging.
okay,
So now Fish and Wildlife is in charge of tagging and they keep better records.
okay, right.
So this is Bear 407 in the first one of his early visits when he still had two tags. This is Bear 407 in 2020. And you can see he still has his 407 tag, but he has lost his second tag and he has a torn ear.
Do you think was that from maybe fighting with another male?
Either fighting with another male or he caught that tag on
Oh,
something and the tag tore out.
okay,
Um, So he showed up in 2020. He showed up again in 2021. And you can see like his size changes depending on the time of year. So this is July, where he's a little bit fatter. And this one's February, where he's a little skinnier coming out after the winter.
so
Um,
okay, so they're in the winter they go through their their seasonal torpor,
yeah.
and so they're going to lose the weight, and then they start July, they're just eating, and then what maybe come November-ish when they go into a hyperphagia phase.
Usually hyperphagia starts around late July, and August is probably the worst time. So
Okay.
if you're gonna leave your trash out, August, definitely never. Yeah.
And do you know, does that
Excuse me.
start starting point, because we're a warmer climate than, let's say, South Lake Tahoe, do do the bears in South Lake Tahoe, they start their hyperphagia in an earlier month?
They do, and they also come out less. So, like with us, we have, like, if we have a warm day in December or in January, then the male bears show up again. And that doesn't usually happen in Tahoe. They usually just den and disappear. Now, I don't see the females with the cubs at all between November and February on a pretty regular basis.
Okay.
But the males on a warm day will wander through.
Okay. And do you think, are they starting the seasonal torpor in November?
I think November, that's when they start to kind of fade away from the cameras.
Okay. Okay.
This is Bear 407 again. And you can see here he did get in a fight. This is after the previous photos. And so then for a year or so, we were able to identify him. He lost his 407 tag, but we were able to identify him from the scar pattern.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so this is Bear 504. And she, we think, is the grandmother and possibly now the great grandmother of most of our canyon bears. And, there's an old flyer that was up at Mary's for a lot of years that said, please don't feed this bear. And it showed a bear in front of a trash can. In fact, there may still even be one down there. And that was Bear 504. So she first started visiting my yard with cubs in, I think, 2013, and she was not yet tagged. And I don't know where the tag came from. And Fish and Wildlife said this was another one that was Sheriff's Department, and so they had no record. Um, but she showed up with the tag on I think this is 2016 or 2017 with two cubs. And this is her later. This is, I think, 2022. And she
You
has a
know?
very distinct scar here. And she's got a J scar on the side of her face here. And she's got these eyebrows.
Right.
So we can find her. And you can see this is one of the fattest bears I've ever had in the yard. She was just huge that year. And she had two cubs. They were behind her somewhere. But she really was massive.
Yeah.
Here she is again a year later. After the cubs had gone off, she's waiting for her boyfriend in the yard. And again, easy to identify with the scar on her nose and the J scar on the side of her face. And there she is again.
Ah, smiling
So
at the camera. Yeah.
yeah, she is, she's interesting because as I think our matriarch, she will come kind of to the front of the house and seem like she's showing off her cubs. She doesn't come to the door, she doesn't try to get in. She just looks like she wants to show off her family, and then she goes on her way. But I like this photo. I think she looks happy, and the everything is green, and so I like that photo a lot. Um, And then sometimes the animals are really easy to recognize because they've had some injury. So for about a year, we had a coyote with this torn ear. And then he disappeared after the fire. We haven't seen him since the fire.
Mm.
Um, and then this is one of our possums that we could identify because he had a bald spot here on his back. And we didn't know why, but he was the only one. Right now, I have a possum who has a broken tail. Only like half a tail, like looks like a bobcat. And so I can always recognize him because he's the only one with half a tail.
And how often are you seeing game on the cameras?
Oh, every day.
Every day.
Yeah, I check every morning, and every day there's something in the camera.
And I would imagine, I mean, your yard is there, but I'm sure all the neighbors, they're probably, having the animals go through their backyards also.
That's right. But most of them are asleep and don't know.
Exactly.
So, yeah, except when they come during the day, they don't notice.
Sure.
Um, Here's another one of our mother bears, and this was just a fortuitous picture where she yawned when the camera went off. And we can recognize her because she has this scar here on her nose, but she's also missing this lower right front tooth. And that's actually visible even with her mouth closed because her tongue hangs out the side of that corner sometimes, like some of the pictures. And so we know that that's this mom bear. Let's see, who else do I have? All right, we call her Blue 3. That's her tag number, Blue 003.
Okay.
And this is the bear that was tagged with her cubs after running through the Arboretum.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah,
And she was also the one in downtown Sierra Madre with two cubs,
I remember that.
ran down Sierra Madre Boulevard. And I had never seen a blue tag. And so I called Fish and Wildlife and I was like, hey, I have this Blue 3 in my yard. Do you know anything about her? And by then, Fish and Wildlife was keeping records. And they said, yes, that's the Arboretum bear.
Okay.
She's not been back to the Arboretum. And I see her only once a year. She comes right around Labor Day. And sometimes she comes with cubs and sometimes she comes by herself. But every year on Labor Day, she's been here for the last 4 years.
So I know in the past, and I may have the numbers wrong. We had three, maybe four fish and wildlife biologists that were kind of assigned to our area, the foothills behind us. But there was some discussion that the funding was going to stop. Was that ever refunded? And
They're working on refunding it now. So they had short-term funding for two, what they considered entry level or intern positions. And so they had two people who worked as what they called human animal conflict specialists.
right, right.
And that funding ran out. But Fish and Wildlife has on their agenda to refund that program. And that would be great because, like, when we have a problem, like last summer when we had the bear that was breaking into everybody's houses up here in the canyon, was breaking the windows, and they had to bring down one of the former conflict specialists who now works up in Ojai, but there was nobody else. And so Jessica West is her name. Many of the people have met Jessica at some of our events like 4th of July or Wisteria when they set up a table. Jessica handled that. And so Jessica now has a different job, but she came down to help with that problem because she was one of the few who had experience.
Well, I remember we had Jessica, Mackenzie,
Yep,
um, Barbosa, I forget her name.
Rebecca.
Rebecca, yeah. And I believe there was even a fourth one, maybe towards the end of that funding period. But
We had Kevin, and then we had two intern. Kevin works for Fish and Wildlife, and then we had two 1 year interns for a while too. Although I can't remember their names off the top of my head.
right,
Kevin still works in our area. I can't remember his last name. I could look that up if somebody wants to know. He still works in our area, and Jessica's further north. Mackenzie is not working with Fish and Wildlife at all, from what I know. And Rebecca, who she did many of the Zoom meetings for us, she
right.
was actually the bear biologist for a long time. So she was head of the division. She retired last year.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think Kevin was he was kind of their media spokesman often, if I remember correctly. And I believe it was last year, Assemblyman Harbedian, John Harbedian, who was Sierra Madre homegrown, he tried to put on the assembly floor to get funding for more research. But I don't think it ever made it ever got any traction.
Well, there is some, let me see if I have the picture. Not yet. I have a picture coming up that will address that.
Okay,
This is just one of our big male bears. And I kept this picture because one of the ways you can tell it's a male bear is the V on his forehead.
okay,
Um, this V right here on his forehead. The male bears develop these two muscles in a way bigger than the female bears. They also tend to have longer noses, and their ankles are fat instead of narrow. And so you can tell a male from a female in those three ways: is the forehead, the long nose, and the wide ankles.
okay.
Um, this one,
Well, may I interrupt again? And
uh,
it seems like that you've been presenting more females than male. Is that accurate that that you're seeing more females than the male bears?
our females stay in the canyon the entire season. So they come in like right now and they stay until November. The
Okay,
males pass through to mate with the females. And
Okay.
so with few exceptions, we don't see as many males stay over time.
Okay.
Um,
And
the
I believe I remember, and you would know better than I, a healthy male in a healthy natural landscape will travel about 12 miles, will be their range. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So 12 miles
Yep.
from Sierra Madre is quite a long ways away.
Yeah, and like we don't see the same bears that my friends in Monrovia see. So my friends who have cameras in Monrovia don't have the same bears, but some of the bears that we see show up in cameras from La Cañada.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know where the overlapping territory is, or
And I believe
but this
the males can be pretty territorial too.
yeah, and I was surprised one year on 4th of July, I had 3 pairs of bears show up in the yard. And it was like it was a party of some sort where they were all hooking up and wandering off on their own while the fireworks were going. And I was surprised that that many male bears were there on the same day in the same space.
Hmm.
So that was kind of a surprise.
Right, right.
This bear, who is pretty black, showed up only on this one day. And I have no idea where it came from or where it went. I've never seen one that color in anybody else's trail cams.
That's the blackest one that I think I've seen locally.
Yeah, I've never seen another one that looked like this. And he was only there one day and then disappeared.
Okay.
Um, this one, sometimes the bears tell a story and we don't know what the story is. So we don't know what's on this bear's nose. And you can see right here, there's like a little drop of something. We're
Hmm.
not sure if this is blood from an injury or if it got into some sort of fruit in the yard. And we were really curious. This is a relatively young bear. You can see from the size of the jade, he's not that big, but he was on his own and never came back. Was here like 2 days and then disappeared.
Hmm.
That's one of our mom bears. And, it's not uncommon for them just to sit for hours in the yard. And this definitely raises one of our big issues in Sierra Madre is how much to haze them. And frankly, for me, if they're sitting there where the only thing behind them is forest, then I will let them sit there. And if they come down this set of stairs and they're too close to my door, I will chase them away.
Sure.
But here, like, there's really nowhere I could haze that bear that would be helpful to anybody else. And so as long as it's not in the street or not near my house, I'll just leave them sitting there. And sometimes she'll like this is a female bear and she had 2 cubs that were wandering around somewhere and she just sat there the entire day.
Wow.
I just didn't go outside. Like if they're there, I'm like, okay, I will stay inside while you're here.
Sure. Yeah.
And let's see. Okay, so this is related to the question about research. So this is Bear 2104, and she's a young female, and she has 2 tags. Fish and Wildlife now tags with 2 tags if they capture a bear. And she has this orange tag that shows that she's from the foothills. Orange is the foothill color, and her number is on that tag. And then she also has a green tag in this other ear. And the females are tagged on the right and the males are tagged on the left. And so Fish and Wildlife was systematic about tagging now so that they can identify from a distance something about the bears.
So when you say
So
the English tags are the foothill areas, it's our foothill corridor from like La Cañada to
like
Cucamonga.
Bradbury.
Oh, to Bradbury. Okay.
Yeah, it goes pretty far in the foothill corridor.
Okay.
So she's a young female, and the Fish and Wildlife science team, and I'm not sure who's even on the team, but Jessica told me they got funding to trace the young females to see what happened to their cubs in dispersion, to see if they stayed in town or they moved out of town or whatever. So this is one of the tagged young females. Never got into any trouble, not in anybody's houses. Just they put out a trap with food, and of course, a bear is going to follow the food. And so she walked in, and they said, "Yay, young female!" And so this is from last summer, and this is after the fire, and she's still wandering around. We've seen her this year, so we know she's doing okay, and that they're collecting some data, and I don't know what. It's probably worth pointing out that the bears don't seem to care about the collars. Like a lot of people are stressed when they see bears with collars, and they say it feels like they're in jail or something. But they don't scratch at them, they don't pull at them, they don't seem to mind them at all. And they do fall off. Like they're a short period of time that they keep collars on the animals, and they're designed to fall off after X months.
Okay. And are they just mostly GPS tracking?
I think so. Like a couple summers ago, Fish and Wildlife released the GPS tracking of the bear that went from Claremont to Malibu and back. And that you can find like online. Like if you look for that, they released the path of where the bear went and where it stayed and when it came back. And that all came from the collar.
Was that the one you say to Malibu that was actually down by the beach?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that one eventually, that was Bear 60 something, if I remember. But that was the one that eventually got hit on the freeway, right?
Yes.
But you
Uh,
see, that started in Claremont.
yeah.
Oh, because I remember the report I read, and I'm going back quite a while ago. It was from the Los Padres National Forest.
Oh, maybe it originally came from there, but it was
They
tagged
keep,
in
yeah,
originally in Claremont.
they tracked it all the way to Claremont. That's a long range,
Yeah, that bear really traveled far, and I have no idea why it wanted to go to the beach. Because
right?
that's a far place from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we know that 2104 she's been seen in the Upper Canyon already this year. And so she's around somewhere.
Okay.
She may have cubs. It's possible she has cubs this year. And haven't seen them yet, but it's right around the time where they start bringing the cubs out of the den.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the fire. The fire up here was pretty scary. And this is a photo from about an hour before the fire hit our area. So this is Wednesday morning. The fire started at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. And so this is about 9:30 on Wednesday morning. And the sky is dark, and the bear is going toward the fire, which is surprising. It's not running away from the fire. It wasn't burning in Sierra Madre yet, but it's heading up toward the fire. So that's like 9:30. That's 11:30.
And could you identify that bear?
No, actually I couldn't because all I got was his butt.
Okay.
And so I didn't get a face shot.
Okay.
But you can see the fire came really close. And because the camera is triggered by heat and motion, the fire set it off. And so I have like 400 pictures of where the fire traveled through the hillside here.
And you have time signatures because I also from probably that same time I was down at Dapper Field, the baseball field, taking drone shots. It'd be interesting to get you copies of those, and you can kind of
Definitely, we can compare.
yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. It was very close. We had some neighbors go up and I have hoses up there that I use to fill the pond. And the neighbors came up and put out the fire with my garden hoses. And then the hot shots showed up the next morning. Well, first they showed up in the afternoon, and then they came back the next morning with their chainsaws. And this is where they put the containment line. And, in 2008, they told me that because I had these stairs here and the animal path, that I had a natural containment line, and that they would always use that as the containment line because they could easily get up there. And they compared it to the Upper Canyon, and they said, in the Upper Canyon, the best we can do is get on people's roofs
Right.
to help stop the fire, and this is easier. So we keep this well trimmed, and we make sure that they can get up there. But here you can see kind of what didn't burn, and what didn't burn, they cut all of it down, right, just to extend the line. So here they are again, going up the hill with the chainsaw. And you can see this is olive trees here in the back, and this is cactus here. And then all of this was jade. And then here we had the Dracania and just some uh, bushes of some sort. I don't know what those actually were. But this is from the 12th of January. So it was just 3 days after the fire, and the deer were the first ones to return. And they came before the hotshots had finished.
So
And
so post fire, I mean, you have a pretty good record of the amount of wildlife that's passing. Post fire, did you see a significant reduction in the amount of?
no, and I was really surprised. So, like, the deer were back within 3 days, and that's what the hillside looked like. And there wasn't much for them to eat, but they didn't really care. And so you can see the ash line comes down here on the hillside, or the fire traveled this path, and then it came all the way down here.
Right.
And then the firemen took out all of this. Um, this is 2nd of February. The skunk returned. He was the second animal to return. And then on the 3rd of February, the bobcat showed up catching rats.
So, I mean, they must have come into the neighborhoods then. I wouldn't think that they would have tried to run up into the mountains to hide.
No, they must have like hidden under our houses. You know, we're all pier and post up here with not much foundation support. And so they probably hid. And because they were back, really quickly. And even like this bobcat was able to catch dinner among the mess.
Sure. So you have not noticed then a reduction in the
I
wildlife.
have not. This year we've had fewer. This year we've had fewer bears so far, early this year, and I think that has to do with the weather, the rain and the heat, and how cold it was, and then how hot it was. So we haven't seen as much traffic this year, but last year, they came back right away. Like the mountain lion here is February also. Like this is right before the mudslide, so early February, and we had sandbagged, and the mountain lion didn't care and walked right through the sandbag line.
Okay.
So I was surprised how many showed right back up in this exact same spot after the fire, like within 3 weeks.
And are you finding, I mean, you mentioned that you're talking with fish and wildlife, but are they using your data? I mean, they have to be because who else, nobody else is doing this.
Right. I hope they're using it. Like I keep sending it to them. And sometimes they do call me and they say, or email me, and they say, hey, have you seen Yellow 508 this year? And I'll say, yes. And here's where she is. Here's some photos. I would like to be like more systematic. I come from a behavioral science background. And so I would like to actually be more useful to them if I could, especially when they're short staffed.
Right,
But it's hard to know how much they want help, especially because, our town doesn't have the greatest reputation for liking them.
right.
They know I get along very well with them. It's in both of our interests to have a good relationship.
Sure.
But I recognize that a lot of people in town are not happy with how they've done their jobs.
Right. Yeah.
I'm almost at the end here. So yeah, so here was the question is, have we seen an increase in bear activity or a decrease in bear activity over the years? And this is a photo from 2014. My neighbor took it actually for me. I was out at the time. And this is the first photo I have of a bear in the front of my house. So until then, I saw them in the back in the camera, but I had never seen one during the day in the front of the house. They were not coming into the canyon at the time. They were not coming down the hill. But after 2014, we started to see it more. So this one's 2016, bear passing through during the day. This one is 2017, where I had mom with 2 cubs. And then once I started having cubs, those cubs came back the years following. And so then this is when we started to see them in the trash. It was 2017, is this family.
Right.
And then they grew up and had their own cubs. And so this was kind of the beginning of it. These are 2 cubs from 2020. This year we had 4 cubs in 2021. We had 4 cubs that year. 2 different mothers had twins. And they were all over the place in the canyon. They were the ones who were looking in windows. And, 2021 was 2020 and 2021 were kind of an explosion of um, problems that would lead to bear problems. So we were all home, we were in the lockdown, we were ordering from DoorDash, which didn't really exist before. We were eating at home and not going out. And even if we did go out, there was sidewalk dining. And so all of the smells and all of the trash and everything really changed in 2020. So because we had four cubs and we had easy food, this is sort of the beginning of where we had a lot of trouble with the bears getting into the trash and moving lower down the hill.
I wonder, has anybody able to make a determination in just say Sierra Madre proper within the residential areas and then the mountains behind us, what our bear population is?
It's hard to tell because all of the stuff Fish and Wildlife puts out is either for all of California or for the San Gabriel Mountains. I can tell from my cameras that um, the highest number of distinct bears that I could identify as different from one another was 20.
Okay, because I had
And
12.
yeah,
Yeah.
in one season. So 20 bears in one season. Last year I had about 12 because I had fewer cubs.
Okay. Yeah. And
Um,
I'll tell you from just my own, just kind of observation at my house, it seems like last year, last season, and this year so far, I've seen fewer bears than I
I
have in the
yeah,
previous years.
I agree. And it's still a little early, like May is about when I start to see cubs show up. And so if there are any mothers, since they're every other year, our primary mother had cubs last year. And so if there are any new cubs this year, it'd have to be from a different mother.
Right.
And that's less common.
And then like with the home intrusion, so I think it was last year where we really had the one real big problem bear that was captured and I believe euthanized. But
Yes.
um outside of that bear, it seems like that the home intrusions have reduced significantly also compared to
Yes.
previous years.
I think that's true. And I have never had a bear in my car or in my house. And most of my neighbors, in fact, I think all of my neighbors adjacent and several houses away have had problems. And part of that's that I'm home during the day. And so if they come too close, I actually chase them away. Um, Part of that is I use a lot of ammonia and I have a Vitamix composter that dehydrates all my food and so I have nothing really in the trash. Um, but I'm sympathetic to the neighbors, especially up here where the houses don't have air conditioning and the garage doors don't close well and the front doors don't lock. Like the canyon has a lot of things that are hard to avoid.
Sure.
So like when Fish and Wildlife says, "Oh, just don't open your windows and the bears won't get in," we're like, "Well, if we don't open the windows, it's 200 degrees inside." So a lot of the advice that they give maybe isn't as helpful in our community up here as it might be other places.
Right, right.
Let's see what else I got for my last few. This is a mating pair. And every once in a while, we can catch them in a mating dance or hanging out. These are both big, grown bears. Here's our marking tree, and you can see all the claw marks that are in it before it tipped over, and mom teaching the baby how to climb it. And then that's all I got.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge body of work that you've done. It, what was it that interested you to begin with?
Well, the truth is, right at the beginning, as I kind of said earlier, I was scared to go in the yard because I had no idea at night, because I
Right.
had no idea what might be up there. And then I liked the pictures. Like I like photography. I take a lot of photos. My father's a photographer. So I liked the pictures. And then I wanted a better camera. And then I wanted a better camera. And then I wanted a better camera. And then I started to recognize this bear versus that bear versus this lion versus that lion. And so then they start to feel like your neighbors.
Sure. And you did some calendars,
I
correct?
have. I've done calendars, I think 4 years out of the last five.
And do we
Um,
have Do we have a 2026
We
calendar?
do have a 2026, and there
And,
is one left at Mary's Market as of this morning, and all the others have been sold, although I can order more if anybody wants them.
okay, and so if anybody wants them, they can tell Jenny or Heather at Mary's Market, and you can order.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to add? And
I will say I have two old trail cams that I don't have up anymore, and they work sporadically. But if you're interested in trying trail cams for the first time and you'd like a free sample to see how it works, I'm happy to donate those to anybody who would like them.
and is there some easy way they can get a hold of you?
They can always ask at the market.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to find me. Also Facebook, I have a Facebook account. You can always send me a Facebook message.
Okay, great. Well, very so informative. Thank you so much. And the work you're doing is just amazing.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's
Sure.
always, I think it's really fun to track the bears, and I know that not everybody loves them, and I respect that view as well.
Sure.
Um,
Well, great. Well, thank you again so much. And we'll see you around town.
yes, thanks a lot, Glenn.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I,